Hi, my name's Gaz, the Mini Painting Punk, and in this video we're going to be looking at the Duncan Rhodes Painting Academy Too Thin Coats paint range Kickstarter. That is quite a mouthful. Just arrived in the post this week and I'm really excited to have a little look at the range. I will give you some of my first thoughts on the paints themselves and the range as a whole. Let's get to it. The set comes nicely packaged in this foam insert, which I'm probably going to keep the paints in as it keeps everything together nice and tidy. There are 60 paints in the range, including 6 metallics and 6 washes. The paints are named in the classic fantasy style with names like Dragon's Gold and Skeleton Legion. Having grown up with Citadel paints, I'm used to this kind of naming structure, but I can see how some people would prefer more generic names for the paints that tell you more easily what's in them. The main gimmick of the Too Thin Coats paint range is what they call triads. Each triad contains a shade, a mid-tone and a highlight. These are indicated by the little symbols in the shields on the back of the bottle. So for example, if you were painting in yellow, you would start out with a shade of dark sun yellow, moving up to skulker yellow and highlighting with yellow flame. I think it's a cute system that's really easy to follow, especially for new painters. I do kind of wish that the triads were named on the bottles, just so that if they were to get mixed up, that it's easy to tell what goes with what. Though if for some reason you do forget or have them mixed up, they do come with this paint reference sheet which tells you which paints belong to which triads and what all the little symbols mean on the back of the bottles. Speaking of which, I forgot to mention that the set comes with 2 effect paints as well. These are both blood and gore effects, and also a paint medium for thinning down the paints as well. I think these were stretch goals on the Kickstarter, but I'm sure they'll be available when the range is fully available as well. The set also comes with a few spare bottles. I'm currently in the process of switching over my Citadel paints into dropper bottles, so they'll definitely come in handy, and a number of miniatures cast in white metal. There are 7 fantasy minis, 2 little chibi minis of Roger and Duncan, some base toppers, and a bag of skulls as well. I'm particularly fond of this big guy with the hammer. Like most white metal models, there's a few issues with some parts being slightly bendy, nothing that can't easily be corrected. I won't talk too much about the models since I'm pretty sure they're Kickstarter exclusives, except to say that this pug in armor and this skeleton dude are both chef's kiss. Really nice models. I'm looking forward to painting them, and I'll probably have them painted and put them up on my Instagram in the coming weeks. So if you want to see more of the models, give me a follow on Instagram, I guess. Okay, back to the paints. I wanted to try these out on a really simple model, so I chose this old hammer orc with bow. I've also painted another one up, trying to use a similar methodology as possible using Games Workshop paints. So we'll start trying to use the triad as it's intended. So let's start with the green triad and the orc flesh wash. The paints come with agitators inside, which is always appreciated. The nozzle of the bottles is more conical rather than the straight tube you get on a lot of dropper bottle nozzles. I think this will help with preventing the nozzles from getting clogged with paint as you use them, so I think that's a really nice design touch. The paint comes out a little on the thick side, which is absolutely fine for watering down. Obviously it's easier to water down your paints than it is to thicken them back up if they're too thin. The paint flows really nicely from the brush. The coverage is excellent. Ironically, in some cases I've found myself only needing to use 1 thin coat. So let's work our way through the triad and see how it looks when we are finished. I found when using the mid-tone that for this triad at least, the difference between the shade and the mid-tone colour was very subtle. When I applied the highlight colour though, things started to come to life a little bit more and I was a lot happier with the results. So let's try out the wash. Now I've seen Goobertown Hobby's review of these paints when he got access to some prototypes at a convention, and he seemed to think the washes were very opaque, almost like a contrast paint. I've not found this the case with these, so whether we just have a difference of opinion or whether they have made changes to the washes based on that feedback, I'm not sure. But it seems to work more like a traditional Games Workshop wash. It seems to tie the colours together nicely. I will probably, after this step, just do a quick pass with the highlight colour again on the most raised areas, just to bring them out a bit more and make them pop again. In the information leaflet that comes with the Kickstarter box, Duncan mentions being particularly proud of the metallics in the range. These are designed to work in a Triad 2, so there's a shade, mid-tone and highlight in both silver and gold. As metallics tend to, they come out of the pot a little on the thick side. With a slightly wet brush though, they flow really nicely onto the model. The coverage is excellent and they have a really nice shine to them as well. Once again, I do note that I don't know if I'm missing something or if my eyes just aren't picking them up, but especially for this one, I can see very little difference between the shade and the mid-tone, at least in the silver metallic. That said, they are really nice to use, much nicer to use than the Citadel equivalent, and I would definitely add at least the mid-tone to my painting arsenal, and then use the highlight to highlight. I would probably skip the shadow in this one because personally I can't really see much difference. Another thing I've noticed while using the paints, and this is I would say 90% user error over a design issue. There's a point at which when you're screwing the lids back on where they will feel like they're getting really tight, and you feel like the bottle is closed. There's actually, if you do another quarter turn from then, it will loosen again and then tighten all the way. I've found a couple of times when I've not tightened them on properly and I've shook the bottle, I've ended up with a little bit of a mess inside the cap. So if you do buy these, just make sure that to twist them past that point at which it feels tight, and it will turn a little bit more and completely close. So here are the finished miniatures. The Citadel one is on the right and the Two Thin Coats one is on the left. I tried my very hardest not to put in any more effort on one than the other. On the back of the paint reference chart there is a handy chart that gives you the closest equivalent in both Citadel and Army Painter for all of the Two Thin Coats paints. I didn't always have the equivalent paints, so I've just gone with as close as possible. Both models are acceptable for a quick paint job. I do find I am slightly happier with the Two Thin Coats version. The paints flowed a lot nicer and were easier to use. Part of this is due to the age of the paints and Citadel's paint pot design, where some of the paints tend to dry out a little bit over time. I found this especially affected the bone parts of the model and the leather boots as well. I just think they look a lot nicer with the Two Thin Coats paint. The metallics also are a lot nicer, I found, on the Two Thin Coats. So the Two Thin Coats paints are undoubtedly high quality paints. I have a few minor gripes with the Triad system. Don't get me wrong, I think it's a great system for new painters. I have just found in a couple of occasions that the differences between the shadow and the mid-tone paints are really subtle, and certainly in the case of the silver, to my eyes at least, fairly negligible. That said, either one of those silvers would make a great paint for anybody's arsenal, and for me would be an instant get to replace Games Workshop's equivalent. Depending on the price point of these, I could certainly see myself buying these on a regular basis instead of the Games Workshop equivalent. There are some colours missing from the range that I would like in there. I feel like the range is fairly low on a lot of bright punchy colours, though I do understand that for this initial Kickstarter they were limited to 60 paints, so hopefully they do well, and hopefully we will see more paints in the range in the future. We don't have a UK price point at the moment. I couldn't find one, at least. The Goobertown Hobbies video said they were going to retail in the US at around $5. Given the value of the pound at the moment, it could be something similar over here, though I would hope that with them being manufactured in the UK that we would get them for closer to £4, £4.50, though I do think I would probably pay up to £5 for paints of this quality, if that was what they came out at for certain. Like I say, I do hope they do well. I would like to see more paints added to the range, and I am really looking forward to getting stuck in and using some more of these paints in the near future. Anyway, as always, I want to thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I've been Gaz, the Mini Painting Punk. Bye bye.